the National Fraternal Order of Police, Patrick Yoes. Patrick, thank you very much for being with us. So can you help us understand, thanks, can you help us understand a little bit about what is it in the police work or in the officers across the country that there is this hesitancy to get vaccinated, despite they're on the front lines of this pandemic and despite the toll that it's taken on law enforcement?
Well, Terry, first, I can make it very clear that there's no question. The science shows that this is definitely a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And we recognize that. We encourage all of our members to be vaccinated. At the same time, we also recognize that we are a microcosm of society. There are people in this country that have a closely held belief that vaccinations are a personal choice, and we respect that. But we, at the same time, encourage our members to consult with the medical personnel and make an informed decision in order to protect them and their families. This is definitely a crisis that we need to address. I suggest that a lot of the problems that we see in this country where we're struggling with all of these mandates really was the wrong approach. The proper approach would have been to incentivize and to try and build some support around vaccinations as opposed to trying to force people to do it. Just simply look at it in terms of what it costs and the investments of a trained officer. What we're doing now is we're putting ourselves in a position where we're talking about taking trained personnel that cities have invested across this country in order to be able to get them to the point where they're effective officers, and telling them that although you operated for a year without a vaccination, and we appreciate it, now if you don't have one, we're going to cast you aside. So maybe the approach here is a little wrong, a little different. It could have been much more efficient if we would have built some consensus around vaccinations rather than trying to force it on people who are already skeptical of it.
And that is a struggle in so many areas, so many companies and public agencies. We talked about those statistics. So many police officers have lost their lives to COVID-19. So on a personal level, in some of these communities, which were very hard hit, you know, how has it impacted the force and the communities there?
Well, look, we just need to look at the environment of law enforcement today. Add COVID to it. I mean, we have, you know, we have the demonization, we have the defunding. All of these things are taking stress, serious stress on officers. And there's no question it is creating a wellness issue, a mental wellness issue for our members, you know, in law enforcement. We're in the process of doing a survey now to gauge our members' feel about their stresses created in a job. And this is before it started, before the COVID mandates came in effect. But a clear third of our members recognize that the fear of COVID and the effects that it's having on them and their families are affecting their well-being as officers as well. So when you put all this together, we're in a tough spot in law enforcement where we're having trouble attracting the best and the brightest to come into the law enforcement field, and at the same time we have people leaving at a very high rate. Now we really need to focus and really dig into a holistic approach on how we're going to stabilize the loss that we have of law enforcement officers across this country. It takes a good 3 to 4 years for a brand new recruit to become an effective officer. That's an investment that has been made by every one of these cities. So it's important that we all step back from all the rhetoric and have some open and meaningful conversation on how we can improve policing in America.
So, Patrick, I guess that leads to a twofold question then, not just what's your message to officers who are hesitant about getting vaccinated, but what's your message just to the country as to why you need more officers now and why it's such a valued job?
I think there's a misconception. You know, for quite some time now, there's been demonizing law enforcement across this country. And the reality is we have about 800,000 men and women who pin on a badge every single day and go into communities and make a difference in their communities. We have cities that have enacted policies and reductions in workforce just by a simple way that they're doing business, and it's creating an increase in crime. And we really need to take a look at you know, this is a very dangerous experiment that's causing people's lives. It's easy to talk about percentages of crimes increase when we talk about homicides, and it's real easy to forget that every one of those is an actual person. So we need to have these meaningful conversations. The very powers we have as a law enforcement officer is directly related to trust in our community, and it's time to put the rhetoric aside and have meaningful and open conversation that's fact-based. and find some paths and some solutions forward so that we can stabilize what I see as a looming crisis in law enforcement because of the way that we're treating law enforcement officers and their willingness to stay on this job.
We for sure need a solution to this issue. So many communities need every police officer, as you pointed out. But let me ask you, from the other perspective, how do you answer citizens in those communities who say, I want all the officers to be vaccinated for our safety? If I need to call 911 or if I encounter police officers in my life, I need them to be vaccinated. So how do you answer those citizens?
Look, I think everyone has their own personal views when it comes to vaccinations. I personally have been vaccinated. I encourage people to seriously consider being vaccinated. I know people who have died from COVID. I know people that have gotten very sick from COVID. So I think we all have to do some soul searching within ourselves. At the same time, I don't feel that law enforcement is really much different than the microcosm of society. I see teachers, I see medical personnel are all taking a stance that they have made a conscious decision not to be vaccinated. The question is whether or not in America we have a right to be able to exercise our rights and make that personal decision. And that's one maybe above all of our pay grades. But I think the reality is that this is America and people get to make decisions. I personally encourage people to take a serious look at it and encourage them to be vaccinated.
Well, we appreciate you making the decision to talk to us today. National Fraternal Order of Police President Patrick Yoes. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.